reacted. Let's show you.
Yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu, the so-called Prime Minister of Israel, requested to be exonerated from all his files. And we're here to say there's no such thing as being exonerated from files, from being a criminal. And he is a criminal, and he should be standing on trial just like every other citizen in Israel.
We've been coming here almost once a week throughout Benjamin Netanyahu's trial to make sure that the trial continues to express our dismay, and especially today after Bibi Netanyahu, without pleading guilty, without taking responsibility, asked Herzog for a pardon, which we find unacceptable. There's still a law in Israel, and that's fine. Let him confess his crimes, let him claim his guilt and responsibility, and then ask for a pardon.
Moving on, viewers, now Pope Leo I, U.S. pontiff, arrived at the monastery of Saint Marouane Anaya in Lebanon, where he visited the tomb of Saint Charbel. Cheering crowds had gathered to welcome the Pope, hoping his visit would promote peace in the country. On his second overseas trip following Turkey, Leo urged Lebanese leaders to continue efforts toward peace in the aftermath of last year's conflict between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah and the continuing Israeli strikes. The 70-year-old Pope described his visit as a mission of peace and will remain in Lebanon until December 2. Listen in to what a few localites had to say.
نتأمل زيارة البابا على لبنان وعلى بيروت وتعم السلام ببيروت وبلبنان وبالعالم كله.
زيارة البابا زيارة أمل وزيارة تجديد للبنان الله بيريد. يعني لبنان من وراء زيارة البابا رح ياخد مسار جديد، مسار سلام اللي هو جايب لنا إياه معه.
And with that, it's a wrap on NewsX World World Report. Keep watching for more international news updates from across the world.
Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. On that note, let's take a look at news making headlines this hour. Amid escalating tensions between Venezuela and the United States, Donald Trump has reportedly rejected Maduro's request for amnesty and sanction removal in a recently held phone call. White House has stated that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved the second strikes on an alleged Venezuelan drug boat on the 2nd of September, but has also clarified that he did not issue an order to kill everyone on board. As Russia-Ukraine peace talks gain momentum, US President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and his advisor Jared Kushner are set to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow this week. Russian forces have claimed that they've captured the eastern Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, which is a key logistics hub. However, Kiev has not confirmed the Russian claims yet. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has warned that China poses national security threats to the United Kingdom. This comes ahead of a crucial decision on the Chinese super embassy in the UK next week. The death toll from flooding and landslides in Sri Lanka has now risen to 410, with another 336 people missing following a week of heavy rains. Over 1.5 million people have been affected by the worst natural disaster in the country. The death toll in the deadly flooding and landslides across Indonesia's Sumatra region has now risen to 631, with over 1 million people evacuated from the region. Rescue efforts continue to trace the missing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has appeared in court for the first time after requesting Israeli President Isaac Herzog for a pardon in his long-running corruption trial. Well, viewers, those are the headlines in our top focus. The death toll from devastating floods and mudslides in Sri Lanka has now exceeded 410. This comes as the country is grappling with one of its worst climate disasters in years. According to the Disaster Management Center, more than 200 people are still missing and some 20,000 homes have been destroyed. This has sent 108,000 people to state-run temporary shelters. Meanwhile, President Anurakumara Desayanake has stated that it is the most challenging natural disaster in the country's history and that the destruction was so severe that estimates for reconstruction are staggering. Evacuation orders are in place in some areas as water levels of the Kelani River continue to rise rapidly. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Vinya Ariyaratne, President of the Sarvodaya Shramdan movement, joining us from Colombo. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on the broadcast. Of course, when we spoke last, the figures were not as high as at the moment. You did say you are expecting the death toll to climb, but it's now hit 410. Many more are reported to be missing. Over 1.5 million people have been affected by this as well. You're working on the ground for rehabilitation. What sort of challenges are being faced at the moment? We do know that the flood waters have not receded.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join the news. At the moment, as you said, a large number of people are displaced and they are in what we call safe centers. There are about 1,400 safe centers. Now, there are three categories of people who are now being affected, who need to be taken, given care. One group is those who are still in their own homes, although the floods have now receded and only slight damages to their homes, so they are there. Then you have people who have left and who have been evacuated and who have also gone to their friends' houses or relations and so on. Then you have more than 230,000 people who are in these safety centers. Now, the immediate needs are, of course, the safety of themselves, because though they have been evacuated from the areas where they have been where the flood levels have gone up, but still these are makeshift places, temples, schools, and other government offices and so on. So their safety has to be looked after in terms of children's safety, because the facilities are also not meant for this kind of displacement. And then, of course, the basic needs like food and also water and sanitation. Then the health needs are also there, because there are these children who have also been affected, who are exposed to the disaster in terms of being exposed to water, and there are skin diseases, skin rashes. Then also leptospirosis is common in situations like this. So there are multiple health problems that need to be looked after while they are in these in these safety centers. Then now in areas where the disaster has the flood levels have gone down and situations have stabilized, there's no rain, but still access is a major problem. There are still many communities, many areas, small towns which are unreachable by road. So even the communication has been disrupted, so mobile phones and so on are not working, and the electricity is disrupted. So until these basic infrastructure, the communication and electricity and these things are restored, it's difficult to assess whether there's more people who need help. And of course, these numbers, as I said last time, it's much more than that. I would say the death toll would also be going up. Then those who are now ready to go back to their homes, they can't just go like that. They need to return to their homes, because the structures are damaged. Partially damaged houses are more than 20,000, and completely destroyed about 600, but its numbers can be much more than what we have now. and then how to get them to clean up their houses, and then associated health problems that are there, then the mental health issues, because there's huge trauma because people have lost their loved ones, and the children have also been exposed to this terrible disaster, so they can have immediate psychological effects as well as long-term effects. So we are addressing all these things through the government system, as well as large numbers of civil society organizations which are operating at district level and also at national level. As we speak, they are responding with various welfare and relief measures in the country right now.
All right, sir, requesting you to stay on with us, even as reconstruction is the priority of the government. We're getting some rather tragic news from Indonesia as well. We're now learning that the death toll in the flooding and landslides across Indonesia's Sumatra region has exceeded 631, with rescue workers still battling to reach affected areas. According to the Disaster Management Agency in Indonesia, the floods, which were caused by a rare cyclone that had formed over the Malacca Strait, have hit 3 provinces and impacted some 1.5 million people. The provinces of Aceh, North Sumatra and West Sumatra have been hardest hit, with thousands still cut off and without critical supplies. In fact, you can see visuals from the region. You can clearly see bridges have been washed away, roads are covered in mud and debris, and logs have been piled high as well. Still with us on the broadcast is Dr. Vinya Ariyaratne. Even as you in Sri Lanka are grappling with this very trying time at the moment, in Indonesia as well, people are facing similar circumstances caused by a cyclone as well. What do you think, in your assessment, should the Indonesian government's approach be for reconstruction? What should their priorities be at the moment? Sir, over to you. All right, there seems to be a network error. We will get that connected, but this is of course the latest that we are tracking from Indonesia at the moment. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to further developments coming in. This is of course with regards to the war that is taking place in Europe. Now, according to the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin has been briefed on the capture of Krasnoarmeysk in Donetsk and Volchansk in Kharkov. Russian military chief Valery Gerasimov has stated that the operations were quote-unquote successful and would help achieve the goals of Russia's special military operation. Footage released by the Russian Defense Ministry shows soldiers raising the Russian flag in Krasnoarmeysk main square. However, Ukraine has not confirmed that the cities are under Russian control. This announcement has come as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met European leaders in Paris, calling for solid security guarantees and stating that territorial issues will be the hardest to resolve. Meanwhile, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is set to meet Vladimir Putin in Moscow to discuss the U.S.-backed peace plan. We're also aware that Special Advisor to Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, will be present as well. In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to visit India from the 4th to the 5th of December. This will be his first state visit to New Delhi since 2021. Now, the Russian President and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi could possibly discuss on a wide range of issues with a focus on geopolitics and potential defense agreements as well. These include possible deals on fighter jets and a missile defense system. For Modi, the visit comes at a time of increasing pressure from the United States to scale back energy and economic ties with Moscow. The trip also provides an opportunity for India to reinforce its long-standing relationship with Russia while further advancing discussions on defense arrangements. It is important to note that Russia is a major arms supplier to India, and New Delhi has also been a significant buyer of Russian seaborne oil since the start of the war itself. However, Indian imports of Russian crude oil are reportedly set to fall to a 3-year low this month, which coincides with tighter sanctions on Russia and India's growing purchases of US energy. Moreover, some sources say that New Delhi is also expected to push for the restoration of a 20% stake for a state gas explorer ONGC Videsh in the Sakhalin-1 project located in Russia's far east. With us on the broadcast is Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting visit lined up on the 4th and 5th December. We do know that India is now diversifying its energy procurements. It did earlier. India's energy minister Hardeep Singh Puri had hinted that India is looking at procuring oil and gas from the United States as well. This, of course, comes in the aftermath of the sanctions that were placed by the US on India's purchase of Russian oil. What are your expectations from this particular visit? Because it also seems that certain defense arrangements are on the anvil.
Yes, as you correctly said, this is the first time since the war in Ukraine when Vladimir Putin will visit India. Well, on one hand, this is very disappointing because Putin needs to be put in total isolation globally. On another hand, one can understand India because India would like to play a role, global role. And one way of doing this is to talk to everyone. As you also correctly pointed out, India is diversifying its imports. It's no longer only Russian oil and gas, but there is also a lot of American oil and gas. And over time, it will be the tendency, I guess, because Russian economy is collapsing. It doesn't matter whether India wants to buy Russian oil and gas or any other product. Russian economy will be not able to supply those. So India needs to look for other markets, irrespectively of its historical ties to Russia. And that's why the visit is very curious, very interesting. There is also an opportunity for India to show a global role by making clear to Vladimir Putin that he should stop the war. He should stop killing civilians every week or even every day. And if India sends that message to Vladimir Putin, that will be very welcome.
Indeed, I do remember the last time Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Russia. During the face-to-face conversation itself, Mr. Modi had made it very clear that war is not the solution. Any sort of resolution should be made through diplomatic means, and he had said it to Putin's face as well. He's likely to reiterate his claims, but at the same time, we're seeing some very interesting developments as far as the war itself is concerned. Russia has now claimed to have captured Pokrovsk as well as Krasnoarmeysk and Volchansk in Donetsk and Kharkov, respectively. What do you make of these claims? Is there any substance to this? Because Russia had made similar claims a couple of weeks back as well. If it is not true, then why is Russia bluffing?
Well, they're bluffing all the time. They said 6, 7 times they captured exactly those same places. Pokrovsk, definitely not. Volchansk, there are some reports that there are heavy fighting. And what exactly does it mean, capture? If there is a Russian soldier making a selfie somewhere in the outskirts of the city, it doesn't mean anything. That the war can continue on those cities for several months ahead. So, well, my guess is because the American delegation is heading to Moscow, Putin wants to show some good news for the Russians, and somehow in the wake of that visit, he wants to show some Russian advance, which is, if it was such, it is a very minimal one. They maybe capture another house or another street, but definitely not the entire city. None of this is in the Russian hands. Don't believe any Moscow news, please.
Indeed, and what do you make of the timing of this particular video that has been released? The video, in fact, showcases Putin, surveilling certain headquarters as well, speaking to his defense chief. But this comes at a very interesting timing because we've just seen a Ukrainian delegation in the United States of America over the weekend trying to iron out the final terms of the peace agreement.
Well, these are absolutely theatrical visits by Putin, and they like to stage those things. The Russians are great manipulators in all of those, and they're prepared to, their imagination is endless. So again, don't listen and don't watch those. But yes, the visits are important, obviously. The one we just has been completed in Florida by the Ukrainian delegation, which show good willingness to negotiate, to talk, to explain the positions of a victim of a war that needs to be defended, that needs extra equipment and munitions to do that. Ukraine is happy to talk to United States and to any other countries in the world when it comes to its support in terms of defense. And yes, what Russia is doing exactly the opposite. This is the aggressor. They want to kill more civilians. They want to capture Ukraine and leave it as a dependent territory in the future. So there are very different goals here. On one hand, Ukraine trying to survive and to defend its territory. On the other hand, an imperialist evil power that wants to enslave another population and make it dependent itself. So that's two different goals. And for that matter, the prospects of peace are zero, if not less than zero. Because Donald Trump tried to be a peacemaker, but here he cannot be. There won't be a peace between Russia and Ukraine until Putin is put under isolation and under a severe demand to stop by sanctions. That's something the United States can and should do.
Speaking of Donald Trump, we've learned that his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his advisor, Jared Kushner, who's also his son-in-law, they're going to be heading to Moscow sometime later this week. They'll be speaking to Putin as well. What is your assessment of the approach by the Trump administration, and do you really have any expectations from these meetings?
I don't have expectations, but the reason for the visit is exactly to listen to Russians again. And Russians will try to bribe Witkoff again. They will offer access to the Arctic Sea. They will offer billions in exploration of Russian resources or some frozen assets. Well, Russians are trying to bribe Trump and his puppets, in this case, Witkoff and Kushner. And that's something we have seen already. These are like little kids who are given chocolates and they go to Moscow to receive more chocolates. That's how I will describe that. That's not serious. This is not a diplomacy. It doesn't lead anywhere. So again, I wouldn't watch that as well.
All right, so requesting you to stay on with us. We're tracking one last piece of crucial information that's coming in at the moment. We've learned that Fu Kong, China's permanent representative to the United Nations, has sent another letter to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He has stated that the Chinese side has noted that Japan's permanent representative's letter to the United Nations made quote-unquote unreasonable arguments. China claims that key issues were dodged by Japan, and China has been unnecessarily accused. This, of course, comes amidst the storm over Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks that have sparked tensions. She, of course, stated that in light of any possible invasion by the Chinese into Taiwan, Japan would respond militarily. Meanwhile, the Chinese representative to the United Nations has emphasized that Japan adheres to a passive defense strategy and has asserted that Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks were grounded in this position. Stay with us on the broadcast is Professor Veselin Popovsky. Interesting because we've seen both countries sending letters to the UN Secretary General. And yesterday as well, there was a very interesting situation in the Senkaku Islands, which is disputed between China and Japan. Both have provided dueling accounts of what transpired at the Senkaku Islands. Japan claims that one of its fishermen was in the territorial waters, and Chinese Coast Guard vessels came. Chinese Coast Guard has claimed that it's the Japanese fishermen who sort of violated China's sovereign territory. So this back and forth has been going on. Many analysts say that in a way Beijing is really trying to test Sanae Takeichi's response to the pressure that they're continuing to mount, whether she would buckle or not, because it's been well known that she is a China hawk. That was her position even before she'd taken the helm of affairs in Japan. What is your assessment of what's transpiring between the two countries, and do you think it can spiral into something worse, or is it just a test of of how exactly each other would respond?
I would consider this more like testing each other, over-exaggerating, and somehow playing with the domestic audience as well. So the Japanese Prime Minister doesn't want to apologize or to withdraw her words because she's supported by various groups in Japan, and she wants to look stronger and not always obedient to China. And in the same way, China wants to look strong internationally and domestically. So these are the games of both Beijing and Tokyo here. But I don't expect escalation because it's already escalated enough in that statement by the Takaichi Sanae, and she will not apologize, but on the other hand, she will not escalate even further. She will not reassert the same thing. In fact, what she said was that if China take over Taiwan, it will be a self-threatening situation that can deny the constitutional Article 9 self-defense clause of the Japanese constitution. But it's a very hypothetical kind of statements that they don't lead immediately to any military escalation. Japan has no army to do that, obviously, and they're just statements without much of consequences. But certainly for the new prime minister, he follows that line of a kind of a robust talk against China, and Chinese obviously respond to that, reminding the historical commitment of Japan to be militarized, neutral, and so on.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your analysis on these very crucial developments. But viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws, and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching NewsX. World Report. Now let's take a quick check at the headlines this hour. Hong Kong police arrests 13 people in connection with the last week's deadly fire that killed at least 151 people in a residential complex. Early investigations revealed that substandard building materials contributing to the fire. Death toll from floods and landslides in Indonesia rises to 502. 508 individuals are still missing. Tulip Siddique, the British Labour MP for Hampstead and Highgate, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison by a Bangladesh court over corruption charges related to her aunt, the country's ousted former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Amid the ongoing peace talks on ending the Russia-Ukraine war, US President Donald Trump expresses hope, says good chance of reaching a Russia-Ukraine peace deal soon. As Ukrainian delegations wrapped up Ukraine peace talks in the United States, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that talks were productive, but more work is to be done on the truce proposal. At least 3 people have been killed and 8 others have been wounded in a Russian missile strike on the east-central Ukrainian city of Dnipro. The governor has said that emergency crews are working to put out fires and search the rubble for anyone who may still be trapped. Donald Trump confirms reports of telephonic conversation with Venezuelan leader Maduro. However, Trump did not reveal further details. This call comes amid escalating tension between both the countries. Venezuelan leader accuses the United States of wanting to take over its oil resources. Venezuela has also asked OPEC Plus to show solidarity in the face of what it calls an escalation that could endanger Venezuela oil production. And viewers, let's shift to the talk focus story here on NewsX World this hour. Hong Kong authorities are still investigating the city's deadliest fire in decades, which has now claimed at least 151 lives. Police are continuing their search of the 7 towers at Wang Fu Court, finding bodies in stairwells on rooftops as many residents were trapped while trying to escape. Over 40 people are still unaccounted for. Investigations reveal that contractors used substandard materials, including a green mesh on scaffolding, which did not meet fire safety standards. These materials were hidden in hard-to-reach areas to avoid inspection. Authorities are facing challenges in identifying all victims due to the severe damage, with some bodies being reduced to ash. Let's take a look at what Hong Kong police has said.
直至到今日下晝4點鐘，已經證實死亡嘅人數咧係一共為151名。咁而我哋都唔排除咧呢個數字咧可能會上。
Let's now welcome Madhav Nalapit, who's the director of editorial at the Sunday Guardian, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, sir, for joining us here at NewsX World and speaking to us. Now, this is a major tragedy that has unfolded. The death toll in Hong Kong fire incident has now risen to 151. There are multiple issues to be discussed, starting from corruption to the crackdown on dissenters by China, the invoking of the sedition law. How do you see these developments in the wake of the upcoming local election?
Look, I'd like to say that there is a lot of corruption in China, let's be honest, and there are anti-corruption drives there, but those drives are mostly to root out political opponents of the group in power in the Communist Party of China, those who are in a slightly different setup than the members of the group that are loyal to the current leadership led by Xi Jinping. Well, many of them have fallen victim to the corruption cases against them. And the reality is corruption is so pervasive. Almost everybody there is making money because official salaries are a joke. They're so small. You can't afford anything. You can't afford schooling. You can't afford even food, I mean, some reasonably good food on the salary that you get. Even senior civil servants get relatively low salaries. So corruption is widespread, there's no question about it. But the Hong Kong fire is a great tragedy. Our condolences go out to all the people who have died there and all the people who are missing and believed to be dead, as well as our best wishes go to those who are grievously injured. But I'd like to say that unfortunately, corruption is a part of life in China, and this kind of fire cannot be kept hidden. I mean, there are many problems like this that are kept hidden by official media. This is too big to be hidden, and frankly, it just shows what corruption can do because you have inflammable material that is bamboo, and you're talking about this wire mesh. It cannot be wire, it must be some inflammable material, and I mean, really causing the fire to spread and causing all those terrible deaths. So I think this is something that's too big to hide, and I think it has definitely led to a crisis of confidence in the ability of the Hong Kong government to police corruption, especially those who are corrupt have got the blessings of those who are in power in Beijing. Thank you.
Mr. Nalapert, if I'm allowed to take another question from you here, do you think the tragedy is also a test for Beijing's grip on Hong Kong?
Look, there's no question that the response to tragedy has been good. There's no doubt about that. But the tragedy should not have taken place. As they say in medical science, prevention is much better than cure. And this could be prevented if non-flammable material had been used in the scaffolding and if highly flammable material had been avoided. So quite frankly, it was a very preventable fire, and it shows that even in Hong Kong, which once had a very relatively clean government, I mean, you know, one important thing about Hong Kong was the salaries were quite high compared to those in mainland China. But today I'm told there's some effort to level the salaries, and let's be honest, today Hong Kong is no different from Shanghai or Guangzhou or any of the cities in mainland China. It's being brought under the direct heel of the Communist Party, irrespective of the promise made during the time of the Hong Kong handover, 1997 something, if I recall, that for 50 years there will not be any repeat. There will be a kind of an autonomous government in Hong Kong for the next 50 years. Well before that, autonomy has been smashed. The rule of Beijing has been completely established everywhere. And I'm afraid that rule has brought not only a reduction of salaries relative to what they were pre this particular crackdown by the communist authorities, but a lot more corruption. And I think this fire is a fire that demonstrates the fire of corruption that is basically burning all over China and frankly doing immense damage. And I repeat again, they would have tried to hide this, the folks in Beijing, but this is just too big to hide. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you for your comment there. Of course, a tragic incident, but many lessons to learn from the Hong Kong high-rise fire tragedy. And with that, we move on to another big development from South Asia. Now, a Bangladesh court has sentenced a British lawmaker, Tulip Siddiq, to 2 years in prison and her mother, Sheikh Rehana, to 7 years for their involvement in a corruption case linked to the acquisition of lucrative land plots in Dhaka. Public prosecutor Khan Moinul Hassan has accused Siddiq of influencing her aunt, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who took 3 plots for herself and her children. Listen in to the statement.
7 বছরের কারাদণ্ড, 1 লক্ষ টাকা জরিমানা এবং অনাদায়ী 6 মাসের জেল। টিউলিপ সিদ্দিককে 2 বছরের কারাদণ্ড, 1 লক্ষ টাকা জরিমানা, অনাদায়ী 6 মাসের কারাদণ্ড। শেখ হাসিনা সহ আরও 14 জন আসামিকে 5 বছর কারাদণ্ড, 1 লক্ষ টাকা করে জরিমানা এবং অনাদায়ী 6 মাসের দণ্ড। টিউলিপ সিদ্দিক ব্রিটিশ পার্লামেন্টের একজন মেম্বার হিসাবে অধিকতর ক্ষমতার অধিকারী হয়ে তাহার খালা শেখ হাসিনাকে প্রভাবিত করেছেন যেহেতু শেখ হাসিনা ইতিপূর্বে তার নিজের নামে এবং তার দুই সন্তানের নামে 3টি প্লট নিয়েছিলেন, সেই জন্য টিউলিপ সিদ্দিকী তার খালাকে এই কথা বলেই প্রভাবিত করেছিলেন যে যেহেতু আপনি 3টি প্লট নিয়েছেন, আমার মা এবং ভাই বোনদেরকেও 3টি প্লট দিতে হবে।
Siddique had previously resigned from her role as a UK Treasury Minister in January due to controversy over her family ties. The case is separate from her financial links to Hasina's supporters, which led to her resignation earlier. Now, Sheikh Hasina was also sentenced to 5 years in prison for her involvement in the land project, and her mother, Sheikh Rehana, received 7 years. Hasina is also facing a death sentence for crimes against humanity related to the last year's crackdown on protesters. And I would now want to welcome back Madhav Nalapit, editorial director at the Sunday Guardian, into the discussion here, sir. Now, there are many nuances in the case. First, to begin with, Tulip claims she's not even a Bangladeshi citizen, but is being tried as one. How is that going to play a role in her conviction?
Look, the fact of the matter is there is no real existing legal system in Bangladesh. Anything is an illegal legal system, so to speak. And, basically that is what is happening in Bangladesh. This is what is called a kangaroo court, and the kangaroo court will basically decide what the extremists who are in power now. Unfortunately, Sheikh Hasina was corrupt. She was incompetent. I quite agree. For the last 3, 4 years, 5 years, her rule was insufferable. But what has happened is Bangladesh has been taken over by a far worse crew, the same people who are descendants, the children and grandchildren of those who fought against the liberation of Bangladesh, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Sheikh Hasina's father. Now, the fact of the matter is that Sunday Guardian is proud to carry a very detailed report about what is happening in Bangladesh, and I would encourage everybody to go on to Sunday Guardian Live and read that report. The fact of the matter is extremism has taken a violent grip there. Minorities, the Christians, the Hindus, the Buddhists, they are subjected to terrible persecution. Moderate Muslims are subject to persecution, and former leaders of the Awami League are subject to persecution, unfortunately in many cases to their execution by legal or illegal means. And I said there's nothing legal now going on there. So basically illegal means basically sentencing people who are opposed to you politically. It's exactly what we see happening in China, for example. And I'd like to say it's a shame that Bangladesh, which was once frankly a very fast-growing, developing country, has now slipped badly and is now no longer growing. It's in fact suffering from a recession, and lakhs of people are being thrown out of work. And this is creating problems among the youth especially. The very youth who basically mobilized against Sheikh Hasina have now begun to mobilize against the junta in power and the extremist coterie around that junta. So very frankly, I think this is a very sad situation. Bangladeshi people deserve better, and I hope that they will get better than the government that they have now. Thank you.
So a very crucial point here is also that the trial was held in absentia without her in presence, and that was also the case with Sheikh Hasina. Now my question is, Sheikh Hasina has been ousted. Khaleda Zia is in a critical condition. What's next for Bangladesh?
Yeah. Look, as I said, there's no question of being held. If Sheikh Hasina returns to Bangladesh, she will be jailed as soon as her flight lands in Bangladesh. There'll be people waiting at the door of the aircraft to take her in custody. And from then on, they'll put death charges against her. I want to ask a simple question. When you got rioting mobs, when you got violent mobs that are killing people, mobs that are setting houses on fire, people on fire, if I may say so. And then what are you going to do about that? Are you going to hand out lollipops to them, or are you going to try and control them? And you control them, and then as a consequence, there is some some loss of life, unfortunate of course, but the fact is violence, unfortunately, is often met with violence. And in any part of the world, you will see countries where people have shot at violent groups. Police, security personnel have shot at violent groups. You're seeing that happen in the United States, for example. I mean, it's now becoming almost an everyday situation that you have a major shooting and very often the shooter is killed by security forces. Are you going to basically therefore put the head of the police in that particular city on trial for murder? Of course not. He's trying to protect the lives of citizens. That's what Sheikh Hasina was trying to do. She's made money, she's corrupt, she's maladministration is a fact, but the fact is that these riots were engineered, and they were engineered with the objective of bringing a new person in power who was more malleable to dictates of certain countries than Sheikh Hasina was. And as a consequence, Bangladesh, you can see, is now descending down the same well of, if I may say so, meltdown that Pakistan has entered some time back. And unfortunately, Bangladesh has joined Pakistan in going down the well of meltdown. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment, sir, and for joining us here at NewsX World. And with that, let's shift focus to some more news. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived at the Elysee Palace for talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. The meeting comes as Kyiv continues to seek sustained military support and deeper security coordination amid ongoing fighting with Russian forces. Zelensky's visit is expected to focus on battlefield needs, long-term defense commitments, and broader European backing for Ukraine. While the Elysee Palace has not released specific agenda details, officials in Paris say both leaders will review latest frontline developments and upcoming diplomatic initiatives. Andrew Latham, who's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you, Mr. Latham, for joining us here at NewsX World. We do appreciate you giving us your time. Now, Zelensky arrived in France and he was greeted by a warm hug from Macron. Macron has always sided and pushed for the Ukrainian needs. It's crucial here to know that the meeting is also coming after the Ukrainian delegation met with US officials in Florida and in Washington. What can we expect now from this meeting between Zelensky and Macron?
Well, the two parties have different sets of interests here. On the one hand, Zelensky really wants